The battle that was waged on the sand behind me is immortalised in the Hollywood movie Saving Private Ryan. It was an absolute massacre, and even after all these years you can feel it in the air. A veteran who was 19 on the day and took part in the first assault wave onto this beach said that his strongest memory was of his dying friends crying for their mothers. Of all the stories that have been reported about D-Day, perhaps the American landing on Omaha Beach is the most famous. This is the story. 43,000 young American lads from New York to Los Angeles and Houston to Chicago hurtled towards this beach in 1,000 landing craft straight into the jaws of death. Most of them had never seen combat before. Many of them didn't even make it out of the assault boats. Exhausted and dehydrated from severe seasickness, those who made it this far experienced hell on earth. Shrapnel was flying everywhere and hundreds were cut down by devastating crossfire as they struggled to clear the beach. The slaughter that took place here on bloody Omaha Beach was unparalleled anywhere else on D-Day. These words from a veteran are inscribed on a stone tablet not very far from here. You can manufacture weapons and you can purchase ammunition, but you cannot buy valour and you cannot pull heroes off a production line. Another guy who came ashore with the US 1st Infantry Division was an army chaplain who carried a prayer book instead of a gun. He said, "The shells were exploding everywhere and I knew that only God could keep them from us." There are many personal accounts of those remarkable soldier pastors on the beaches of Normandy, both from the individuals themselves and from those who were shoulder to shoulder with them during the battle. The chaplains stayed with the men throughout, comforting the wounded and praying for the dying. Few of us will ever have to contemplate what those lads went through in those few horrific hours of carnage on this now peaceful beach in France. I've brought many people here throughout the years and invited them to step into the story. On each occasion, I've seen them confronted with the fragility of life. The defences here on D-Day were formidable, but it could have been a whole lot worse had it not been for a clever deception plan back in England that involved a gigantic army complete with inflatable tanks, cardboard landing craft and some pretty smart work from double agents who fed false information to the Nazi high command. The net result is that everyone thought the invasion was going to come at Calais, not here in Normandy. Even Rommel, who was in charge of the Atlantic Wall, was caught completely off guard. June the 6th was his wife's birthday, and so as the Allies were approaching the beaches, he was cutting birthday cake back in Berlin. In the first 2 hours of the landings here, the casualties were running into thousands. The top brass out at sea even questioned whether the mission should be aborted, asking whether the sacrifices here on Omaha were worth it. History would answer that question for them. The battle that was fought and won on this beach was a massive contributor to the liberation of France and the end of the war in Europe. It wasn't just the army chaplains who were unarmed that day. Another was the famous wartime photographer Robert Capa. He captured the only existing photographs of the operation here on Omaha Beach. Many more photographs were taken by him, but due to a developing accident with the film back in London, they were all destroyed. I've got 2 battle helmets that both have their origins here. The one worn by an American was dug up in the sand just a couple of years after the war. The one worn by a German was found decades later in a drainage ditch up there on the hillside. That's where the famous American Cemetery is situated. It is the final resting place of 10,000 American men who lost their lives on D-Day and in the 10 weeks of fighting to liberate Normandy. 10 miles away at Cambe, there is another cemetery. It depends on donations and is run entirely by volunteers, as opposed to the many full-time staff and big central government budgets that are allocated to both the American and the Commonwealth War Graves Commissions. It's different because it's German, and the visitor numbers are in stark contrast to the American cemetery. I've been there lots of times as well, and as soon as you enter the place, you are confronted by the contrasting atmosphere. There's parking for just 20 cars and 3 coaches, as opposed to 500 cars and 50 coaches here. It says it all, unfortunately. Less people want to be there. Certainly at Cambe there are some evil people that are buried there, including an SS officer who ordered the execution of 642 innocent people in a French village. But the vast majority of German war dead signed up neither for the cause nor the fight. Winston Churchill, the British wartime Prime Minister, was absolutely right when he said this: when war is over, it no longer matters who was right, it only matters who is left. Thanks so much for watching. The links to other films in this series are in the comments. And if you want to hear more from me, you know what to do. See you next time.